can. This is, after all, the country's national challenge. How do we build a society where everybody has access to opportunities and prospects that many have never had before, as quickly and as effectively as possible? The next point I want to make is that the current discussion about transformation, lowercase b, uppercase, whatever you want to call it, this is not a rigorous enough discussion, both in the public arena and elsewhere. So people use the terms BEE to refer to whatever they wanted to refer to. They use transformation very loosely, and it's often not clear exactly what people are referring to when they talk about BEE. We don't have enough data. The efforts of my friend Mr. Matona notwithstanding, I think we know too little about the key components of the legislation and what impact it's had: preferential procurement, employment equity, and the codes and the charters. I think we know too little about that. And there are far too many political slogans flying around, and now we have international players also contributing to a slogan and driven discussion, which is not helpful for the country. What are we trying to achieve exactly? You might want to argue, in a country where I disagree with the president, poverty the last 15 years has got worse, not better, where, depending where you draw the line, anywhere from 40% of the population to over 65% of the population. So are we trying to move people out of poverty? Is that our main aim? Are we trying to create billionaires or millionaires, as Kuben positively indicated has been achieved? And I agree with him. I think it's a positive thing. Or are we trying to achieve a middle class, an independent middle class, separate from the state, that will help drive the economy and preserve democratic rights? I think it's all of them, but people don't clarify what they mean. So at CDE, we are, in a sense, framing our thinking around two questions. What has worked over the past 32 years? What have we done well? There are some things. It's not all bad. What has failed? And I think one needs an objective and independent view, as data-driven as possible, on that. Now, this is not a simple conversation. We're, after all, talking about fixing, restructuring an entire society. Let me give you some examples of the complexity of the conversation and the questions that need to be asked. The first is causation. So the president in his SONA told us all sorts of things that were going well, including income in the Black community that's improving, and he attributed this to BEE. Well, there are other factors in this. Other people say everything going wrong in South Africa is because of Black economic empowerment, and that's clearly ridiculous in my view, and he rejected.
Yeah.
Sorry. Hello? Ah.
You have 2 minutes. And
No, I thought I had 10 minutes. 7 minutes. Okay. So causation is one issue. The second issue is how to promote effective small Black businesses, small and medium-sized Black businesses. And is the state the right party to drive this? They haven't been successful up to now, so some big questions. A third big question concerns, are we the generals who know how to fight the last war? Everybody wants to demand all sorts of things from big companies. I'm not sure that's the best focus of our attention. I'm interested in the taxes we and big companies pay, and if we want skills development, for example, we need to fix the basic education system. So let me turn to sort of end. I think you have to ask a question about, is our current focus on the key instruments of capital letters Black economic empowerment diverting attention from other very important issues, improving education, where we're appalling, improving our skills system, a more labor-intensive economy, the shape of our urban economy to allow poorer people access, and so on. So are we focusing on the right issues? And then lastly, I am a big advocate that growth, I'll use this in different ways from Kuben Naidu, but growth will be a very powerful lever, probably the quickest and most powerful lever to get the most number of people, millions and millions of people, onto a different trajectory. It's not growth alone, because transformation has to be part of that. But growth will be very important, and the demographics of the country mean that growth will be driven more and more by Black South Africans, especially if we improve skills and education and a number of other things. So just to end then, CDE is very much a part of this debate. We are spending resources in thinking seriously about it and in the options that might be on the table, amendments, options, as we think this is vital. So we look ahead to the next 10 to 15 years and the coalition politics that will probably characterize the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and let's give her a round of applause. What a robust panel. Yeah. Okay, now let's see the hands for questions. I'm going to start on the left because of the Deputy Minister, so I'm not ignoring you, Commissioner. So I've got number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, Commissioner, then number 6. So can we get the mic to... And then online, please post your questions. Prof. Busani is collating them.
Good afternoon. My name is Andre Young. I represent an organization called Business Transformation Design. And my question is simple. When do we stop being distracted by the illusion of the past? Because the past hasn't brought us to the future we want now. And that's measured by simple indicators. Youth unemployment, the ownership of the land. Capital clearly is not in our control. Hell, the commissioner said it. We don't even have management control. We haven't transformed. So my question is, and William, I'm really looking to get your mind on this, but please, Duma, come along. The dynamic complexity that we face leaves it so unpredictable that we need a sense-making mechanism that allows us through data to navigate this unpredictable, complex journey, yet make the decisions that bring us to the place we want to be. Because I think we all agree on that. What dynamic complexity sense-making is missing? Because I get a sense that it's not just about state capacity. It's not just about private sector willingness. What's required in this dynamic complexity sense-making? Thank you.
Thank you. Number 2.
Thank you very much. My name is Sandile Zungu. Among many hats I'm wearing, I'm a chairman of Seriti Resources. In South Africa, where you have less than 10% of the population being classified as white, and that population controlling more than 80% of the economy. Is it really just to even debate? My apologies. Is it even just to initiate a debate about the need to sustain a transformation? For me, transformation, more than anything else, is to deal with the colonial and apartheid patterns of ownership and management of the economy. All of these skills development, enterprise development are very essential, very critical. I don't want to undermine them, but I suspect they are secondary. We have to deal with the biggest elephant in the room, which Malekane spoke about because it's historical. Now, coming back to the hat I'm wearing, you know, Cuban, before he left, he spoke eloquently about the transformation that has happened in the coal sector. We're very proud of that. We have to be very proud. Because therein is a sector, probably the value chain, which is controlled by black people and the government. Because if you look at the value add on coal, converting that to power, it lands in ESCOM. So if you look at that value chain, it's a very important development that has happened. It's not been about just coal ownership changing hands. What you have seen, the likes of Exxaro, the likes of Seriti, doing what their predecessors never did in those mining towns, rehabilitating those big holes in a manner that is exemplary, and driving the capital allocation, which has been diverted to this part of the economy, driving economic growth like it never happened before, in a very orderly fashion. What you have seen are these two entities driving the pride of South Africa's move towards just transition. The amount of good work that the likes of Seriti, I can talk about my company, are doing in Mpumalanga. Wind turbines, solar panels, real deployment of billions, tens of billions of capital, new capital, employment creation, and us even becoming the catalyst for a turnaround in an enterprise such as Transnet, and ensuring that its capacity to export bulk commodities is enhanced. Those are success stories for me. And that's what we should be talking about as a case study. I'd like to impress upon University of Johannesburg to do just that, to look at how did this thing start. It didn't start by people saying we are connected, politically connected. Certainly, if you look at and dissect the composition of Exxaro, you'll find the list of such evidence. And if you look at another example called Seriti, there's no such evidence. That is, it was politically connected people saying, please give us this. Competitive, complex bidding processes where we emerge as winners, subjected to a lot of scrutiny, global scrutiny. In the case of South, to an Anglo-American, when we emerge as the buyers. So it is, I think, grossly insulting, in my opinion, to reduce empowerment to just politically connected people grabbing. Evidence points to the contrary. And I would like to impress upon all the panelists and other people to do appreciate that we are not in a perfect environment. There's a need for tweaking. There's a need for looking at this policy. And therefore, what the president said through the deputy minister in his remarks is poignant. We have to continuously monitor this thing. But to throw the baby in the bathwater and say empowerment is not working is very disingenuous. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one, number 3.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alvina Getsemane from KwaZulu-Natal. I'm representing Black Business Federation Women. Mine is not a question, but ngifuna ukuqonda leyo ukuthi we've been attending like seminars and it became talk shows, because now after this we would like to understand what is the strategy that is going to be used to attend or in all the concerns that are being raised in this seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvina. The next one, number 4.
Thank you again, Program Director. Rudy Peterson again here from UJ. I should say to my previous speaker, it's good afternoon, not good morning, just to correct her. I'm not sure, Program Director, are we allowed to throw a swipe jab at the minister, to perhaps throw a one at the minister, but I'll do it any case. Deputy Minister will decide. I think the reason I'm starting on that note is that the 3 speakers have rightfully touched on the unfortunate disequilibrium in terms of the implementation of BEE and what the stats is saying. So, and the issue of fronting came out. Does that mean, and my question for perhaps if the Deputy Minister wished to, given these stats and given what you've thrown there, Matona and Marakani, given those stats, does it mean that our monitoring and evaluation has actually failed in terms of BEE? Or is it due to a crack in the system? I want to agree with you, Prof, about it's not the BEE that is failing, it's the entire system. So it can't be wrapped only on the shores of BEE. It's actually the entire system, and I want to agree with you there, and I'd like to get your view as well. The last thing I just want to touch on is, whilst you are mentioning it's the entire system and the whole BEE policy management that has actually failed, there's another conundrum that is actually a curse in South Africa, and there's the issue of you've taken us back on a political trajectory. Thank you so much for that. You know, the history of PAC and ASAPO, we're not telling that story anymore. Thank you for reminding us. There's that issue of the masses, and you mentioned the issue of the masses are exploited. All BEE custodians comes on, I represent the masses in one way or the other, and the masses have become exploited. You don't need, it has become a rallying war cry. I represent the masses. And I wanted to say earlier to the Deputy Minister, unfortunately, sadly, the Deputy Minister says it's not only the true story, there's been benefits of BEE, but the perception out there it has enriched a poor, call it what Zuma call it, clever blacks. It has enriched a few blacks in the system. So the issue of the masses being exploited is the issue of populism. I mean, you look at Zuma, you look at what we had in this country that almost brought the country to a standstill with the happenings in KZN because of one person and through populism. Later this week, the city is going to be in Eastern Cape will be turned red when Malema appears for his last session. So we've got this element of populism that has just ran away with the issues in this country, and I just like to get your view on it. I thank you, Program Director.
Commissioner, number 5, then I've got number 6, 7, and then I'm going to allow my panelists to respond. Commissioner.
Thank you, Program Director. I would like to address my question to Professor Gumede. Prof, I have actually written you a letter on the question I'm going to ask. I'm just taking advantage of you being here to ask the question. To ask the question because because of the responsibility I have of monitoring BEE, I follow with great interest the information that you put out in the public domain about BEE. And I've been trying to understand exactly what is the basis of some of the pronouncements you've made about BEE. There are two things which you are consistent about. The one is the reference to the Mineral Council report. And by the way, I also went to look at that report. And I'll say something about what I found that does not accord with what you say about that report. And then, of course, the other thing you refer to is what the Treasury official in the Chief Procurement Office has said at the Zondo Commission. Now, if those are the only two bases of the statements that you are making, can I just ask, what original research have you conducted on the subject of BEE, other than reference to those two things, which consistently you have repeated here? Because to be honest with you, they are simply anecdotes. I think in the context of an academic research setting, you will know what an anecdote is. It's like hearsay. They are simply hearsay. So I'm asking you, what original research have you conducted as an academic? What research question have you investigated? What data set have you used? What methodology have you employed to arrive at such bold and definitive statements about BEE, about the policy that is so foundational, so important to make those statements? Can you share with us what research, original research, as an academic, other than reference to these two documents? Because surely, if you have not done any original research, again, basically what you're saying is anecdotal and hearsay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioner. And then I've got the last two. Oh, I forgot. Sorry, Dr.
No,
Ngozi.
it's fine, it's fine. Well, I think I appreciate Matuna's approach to Prof. Kumete. And, oh, yeah. Okay, I was saying that I appreciate Matuna's approach to Professor Kumete and his line of questioning. But perhaps I will ask the question to the entire panel instead of just maybe segmenting the questions to each individual. To say, of course, in light of what Matuna has said also, we have diplomatic tension between ourselves and the US. And so how then do we deal with the issue of being told in this symposium that we must abandon BEE? And yet we're also being told externally to our own political system that we must abandon BEE because it's a race-based law and so forth. So because the challenge is, whilst we are trying to deal with our own domestic policy issues, the diplomatic tensions affect that process. So we then have to defend our own policy because now it becomes a matter of sovereignty. So now this new tension has arisen because we were trying to say, well, perhaps we can abandon it because, and Prof. Chris is right to say, the origins of BEE lie outside of the African National Congress. But now that it's here, I think the ANC has decided to then say, well, perhaps let's not abandon it. But how do we adjust it so that it impacts an intractable problem? Youth unemployment, inequality, and so forth. So I think my question is clear. I will not overburden the methodological questions because I think that has been taken care of. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. The last two in that corner.
Thank you, panelists. And good day, everyone. My name is Lawrence Oboko.
If you can speak to the mics for the online group.
Okay. My name is Lawrence Oboko. I'm a faculty in JPS. I want to start with when Trump came back, was reelected, they used AI to investigate the social security system in America. And then what they discovered, people that are between 90 to 120 years were still receiving social security. And the list goes on like that. Now, looking at this BEE, in my opinion, I believe BEE is a well-intended policy by the government to reduce inequality and poverty. And then looking at other African countries, and one of the panelists mentioned Nigeria. And then in Nigeria, there was an indigenization decree, which was also messed up by one factor, corruption. And this same BEE is also facing that similar fate. Is it not time that we start telling ourselves the truth? To say what is actually wrong. In class this morning, we were looking at outsourcing and restructuring. One of my students said, look, when it comes to outsourcing, what people do when it comes, they remove some people, they attack those low-skilled people, and then you now go behind the door and bring in others. Bring in a company that will now come and take over, and then that will even cost the organization more. Why is it so? These are questions we should ask ourselves. Why is it? What are we going to do? What do we do in order to make sure that this well-intended policy, all the loopholes that allow people to manipulate it, how do we stop it? It is only when we ask ourselves those questions, that is when we can make headway. Because we cannot say we should, like one of the participants did ask question, how do we move from this symposium and say, no, we should do away with BEE? If we do away with BEE, what are we going to replace with it? Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Prof. Lawrence. Lindiwe?
Thank you, Program Director, and good afternoon, everyone. I am Lindiwe Mavundla, and my question to the panel is we got a very good narrative of ownership in the annual reports. But one would want to know, picking from the professors, the black industrialists, as it was mentioned by one of the panelists, you spoke about black capitalists. And one would want to know, who are these black capitalists? Should we not actually be getting information on the black capitalists and work on that? And the second part for me is the issue around black ownership. Why are we divorcing small and medium enterprises from black ownership? Are they not black owned? Should we not be getting statistics on that so that we then get a bigger picture and a clear, comprehensive picture about black economic empowerment? And the last aspect for me is that we are fighting inward, criticism is inward. And what is the approach that should be followed by us when we deal with core challenges about broad-based black economic empowerment? Not coming from black people, of course, coming from, you know, the solidarities, the Afro forums. When we as black people are fighting inward, referring to Professor Gumede saying that BE is not working, we must cut it out. Now, how do we deal with core challenges coming out? Because they use your statistics, they use your analysis on what BEEs and fight against this. We are moving forward, we are not going backwards. We are looking at BBEE that is reimagined. And the last part for me is that as and when we share the statistics, we write articles, it is very important for us to also persuade, the reader. When we have only 46 people that have benefited from BEE, how do you trace that? What informs that? And when there's 1 trillion spent by government on BEE, where is that money going to? It can't just be corruption. We should be having a record of that. And I think that should be assisting us in a way. And the other thing,
In
conclusion, program director, my issue is that when we're informed here about literature review, we informed that it's not, it looks like it's not conclusive. Minimally there are negative aspects. Do we need more scholars to research on BBEE? Is that the case? Because it looks like, we're having quite a lot of gaps other than data, and we need scholars. Thank you, Program Director.
Okay, thank you, Lindy. The last one from Professor Mukwena, from the Dean.
Thank you very much. I use my special powers to join the queue. Thank you, Program Director. I just want to make a case for technology and digital transformation. I believe that the single biggest unlock of progress today is technology. If we look at the leading nations in the world, they are called digital sprinters. They have leaned into digital technology to leapfrog their natural progression. As important as the BE discussion is, we're missing a much bigger debate. Is how do we use digital transformation to catalyze society? Because what that will do, is that it'll grow the size of the pie. A discussion about BEE, unfortunately, is a discussion about one pie with a constant size. We have to actively grow the pie so that when we implement BEE, we're implementing it on the back of a much bigger pie. And that's why I think technology comes into play. The World Bank tells us that to get universal digital coverage on the continent, it'll cost about $100 billion, where every person on the continent will have digital connectivity. We're looking at about 80% of that going into the subsea cables. We need about 100 more data centers across the continent from Cape to Cairo, supported by data policy and cloud policy, so that technology doesn't threaten sovereignty and create risk for us. We're looking at about 240,000 base stations and 240,000 kilometers of copper and fiber to actually connect Cape Town to Cairo. So all of that will ensure that everybody is connected. And the reason I make the point is that we know that small businesses are the epicenter of job creation and economic development. But small businesses will never scale unless they adopt e-commerce. We have 70 million customers and consumers in the country. That's not going to help you scale. You have to be looking at the world. Now, what does e-commerce present as an opportunity? Before COVID, e-commerce was 1.7% of all retail sales in the country. At the moment, e-commerce is about 7% of retail sales in the country. We want to get to about 15 and 20% to compete with the global north. Now, for that to happen, connectivity costs must come down. Digital skills must become a reality for all of us. We heard the point around the need to invest behind STEAM education. And Commissioner, the conversation you and I have been having is around how do we think about repurposing the skills fund to teach in-demand skills that are relevant for us to take advantage of digital technology. India produces 1.6 million engineers a year. We as a country produce less than 10,000 engineers a year. Previously we used to have about 10,000 distinctions in maths in matric. We're now sitting at about 5,000 distinctions in maths in matric. So we have to be thinking about consciously capacitating every single South African to participate in the digital economy. That's the single biggest outlaw. Yes, industrialization is important, but industrialization on the back of 5IR, not just in the past. We have to be thinking about equipping ourselves with the right skills, investing in the right areas, and we need to locate BEE spend in the technology debate to get exponential growth and not incremental growth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. The reimagined transformation to drive inclusive economic growth. Deputy Minister, I know there were questions posed to you, even though you were not in the panel. So before I allow the panel to respond, starting with Duma, Chris, and then William Gumede, then Anne, I'm going to allow the Deputy Minister to respond.
Okay, well, Prof handed the mic also. I don't know if they want me to say something. And Mr. Peterson, you want me to say something? Okay. I think one thing that is important in this debate is an acknowledgement that BEE.
Dear microphone.
Okay. It's an acknowledgement that the BEE is an important policy to respond to the historical inequalities rooted among social categories in our society, in South Africa in particular, class, race, and gender. So it's important to really understand that the foundations of building a democratic future was based on these areas. And it is a very important debate that we have to address ourselves. So when we review, we should not scratch above surface. We need to dig deep into finding lasting solutions. So it's important really that we go there so that also when we reflect even on how policies, especially, okay, let me talk about the ANC, which I'm a member. It's not a dying organization, the ANC, unfortunately, Prof. It is not, but it's going through a process, but a very important process. So policy evolves. When we look in how policy evolves, at a given time, organization will make its decision, which the ANC prior to 94, I must say, Doctor, through is ready to govern. Look into number of policy options that must dominate the democratic South Africa and decided accordingly. So it's important really when we look into those issues, we go through. Now, Mr. Peterson, we have made an admission that the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation have got to upscale its capacity to monitor, but monitor on what? The current period, in the next 5 years, until 2029, government has adopted medium-term development plan, MTDP. But critical in that MTDP is around 3 priorities, which the department has got to be, those will dominate the activities of the department. Those strategic priorities, which is to ensure inclusive growth and job creation, and ensure that we reduce the cost of living and undermine or eradicate poverty in South Africa. And lastly, the capacity of the state. It is not just a mere declaration of those priorities, but capacity of the state. Are we able to build a capable state, ethical? It's an ongoing program that is going to dominate the activities of the department. And I will do so also in terms of collaboration with the institutions. But also here, what is important, even amongst the panelists, is that we need to do something extraordinary to fix the data that we make reference to on these important policy positions. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Diam. Duma?
Thank you so much.
You've got 5 minutes to respond to all the questions.
Yeah, so 95% of the time I talk in public, I'm talking about unemployment, how to grow the economy, jobs, universal basic income, but today I'm focusing on ownership. So, Commissioner Matuna, you said, where is the original research? I don't think you are listening properly. He said that it was done by a bank. Yeah, so it's not original research. So the question I want to ask, these fake bank statistics, why are they not public? Because I did research at the same time for the mining Pakisa and many other entities. It is publicly available. I can put it on that screen right now. Anybody who has ever interrogated this data about mining will tell you 2 things. One thing that is most important. Ownership in mining has consolidated around 3 companies. Exaro, Siponkosi's Mining, and there are very few politically connected people. African Rainbow Minerals, number 2, and Royal, politically connected? No. Patrice's company precedes the BEE Act and precedes the Mining Charter. Number 3 is Royal Bafokeng Holdings. Now, in the research that I did with the receipts per company, per value of each company and ownership, 51% Exaro, 51% African Rainbow Minerals, Royal Bafokeng Platinum. I give you the receipts. 80% of the mining by value in 2014, when that fake research was supposedly done, was owned by these 3 companies. Now, since then, in 2014, since then, Royal Bafokeng has exited mining. So they are only on the listed 2 companies, Exaro and African Rainbow Minerals, which account for 73% of black ownership in mining. Now, there's one caveat on this information. It's Seriti. So, you know, you ask about, Seriti, I've said with Mike Eke, he wouldn't give me a number. So he said he's going to give me a number the next time. So I do my own number. Sandile, I value your company at Exaro, you know? So Seriti is the largest black-owned company in South Africa, according to my calculation. And the last thing I want to say, which I'm working on, then after looking at the last 60, is that the other positive thing I've discovered in my research is that there's 30 black companies that have got a net asset value of more than R1 billion. And so I am focused on these matters, and we're working with the Sunday World to document these companies. I believe that the last thing I want to say is that I'm also working, I believe when we document these companies, I want to give recognition to Dr. Ntatu Mutlane and Neil. You were also there at some point for a short period. But I recently, so that was the first black company to list on the JSE. And my parting point, so when I met Dr. Mutlane back in the day, you know, I used to have a good relationship with him. The first time I met him was above a used car dealership in Elof Street. And then the last time was in Sandton. So I said, Dr. Mutlane, this is why these fake statistics the statistics must interrogate. So I said, Dr. Mutlane, can you help me? You've got assets of 20 billion, and the black ownership in Nail is 2%. What are you going to do to narrow that gap between the two? He said, my son, that is an issue for the next generation to solve. So when we quote those statistics of black deal flow, and we count Real Africa investment was 2.6% black ownership. Mzikumalo's African Rainbow Minerals, I was there at the listing, it was 11% black ownership. So when we count those statistics as money that was transferred to black people, it was not transferred to black people. Those companies, that was the best they knew. They were fronting for white institutions. So when we look at the data, we have to clean the data. And I agree, if anything comes out of this, we must do the data. The last thing I want to say, Dr. Susan, now that I've settled the issue of ownership, the next one, we were with Dr. Matuna at the DTI, and we said, we have to look at that procurement, because we can't just be talking opinions, and, you know, we must have the data from Treasury. So what I said is that if anyone here can help me, when I do the BEE in any company, you get a dump, and then we do the analysis. So I'm suggesting that we need to get Treasury to give us a dump, because I remember doing it for KZN. You get a dump, and then you do your own analysis, and you can sort the data on SAP, and you can find out who these companies are. I believe that, and I need people to help me and support me, that procurement goes to white companies, but I don't have the evidence, so I won't talk until I finish that. So I finished on ownership. The next thing I'm going to focus on obsessively is procurement. Thank you.
Thanks. I knew you were going to drop that one. Chris, you want to come in?
Okay. Yeah. No, thanks. I think that there was a question about what is missing. I think you were asking, what is missing? See, one of the biggest problem that I have, when I started, like why is it that 95% of the population wants to get into companies owned by 5% of the population, which is the question that Mr. Zung was also raising. So as long as BEE is tied to empowerment by white companies, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. And over time, it's going to be basically dismantled. And this brings me to the question of courts. Someone asked, how do we deal with it? It has to do with the politics. So if we go back to the politics, you observe that black people are so fragmented. They do not have a common understanding of the structure and the kind of economy that they want. But if you look at the DA or white people, they are clear, very clear. They want a capitalist, liberal economy. That is what they want. They are already empowered. They've got power in the private sector. They don't want the state to interfere with that power. So they want a capitalist, liberal, private sector-led, you call it, economy. And they are united in that. There are very few, you can count them like Kalni House, white who are radical. But the majority are united, you know. And I think that this political fragmentation of the black population leading to the misalignment in the politics then leads to weaknesses in the formulation of the law. Because the parliament is fragmented, but it's majority black people. They don't have a common understanding and a common view of the type of economy that we want. So that's the fundamental problem with South Africa. And then when it comes to the issue of populism, you are correct, because white capital is in charge of this economy. It decides when to invest, where to invest. And before the democratic government, white capital was already restructuring, right? There was privatizations, call for privatization. And when the country became led by a democratic government, that led to the opening for white capital to dismantle local value chains and begin to link their companies to global value chains. That led to deindustrialization. So, Deputy Minister, whatever you said, what you said, I agree 100%. But the conundrum is that it presupposes that the country is in the process of industrialization. So we want BEE in the context of deindustrialization. It's not going to happen. It can't happen. And because of that, whatever efforts at trying to resolve the problems of poverty, unemployment, etc., they're not going to work. We know China lifted people out of poverty because of industrialization. Same thing with South Korea, Malaysia, and so forth. And when you look at those economies, the state was at the center, not established big companies. In South Africa, it's so bad because the democratic government came about in a context where the economy was already monopolized. There was no space to basically for black people to add value without being constrained by the already monopoly power that exists. That is why, in my view, one of the it's my theory, economic theory. When I look at the literature, finding no effect of BEE, including on productivity, for example, it's because black people do get trained, they do get education because of transformation and so forth. But when it comes to companies, they are not given occupations that are aligning with their skills. They are always put at the bottom. So we don't get the adequate, the level of productivity that is embedded in the skills of black people because of the dominance of these white networks in the companies. I don't know, do I still have time?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Add to what Chris was saying, 80% of the current black ownership on the JSE is mining and finance. If you look at the structure of the economy, Professor Tando, the only thing that's grown from 1994 to 2007 is mining and finance. Finance has grown by 3.9%, 4% a year, and that's much faster than the economy, and that's what we call financialization. And then the last thing I would say on a lighter note, the communists, we all live next to Bedford View. So in the mall, we meet Solima Paila, this comrade here, and we disagree about communism and socialism. I'm not yet there. So, but I was with Alex Masila. I said, okay, Alex, I'll agree. Education, health, it must be out of profits. And then he said transport, yeah. So I'm not yet there. Thank you so much.
Okay. Prof. Gumede?
Thank you. Let me start with, I obviously cannot answer all of the questions here, but let me start with the one, I think it was an interesting one around what do we do if there are external forces, the US, and so on. How do we do policy? Because there's the US, and then we have, within South Africa, let's say the far right, and so on. What do we do in that context? My response, I've been here before. I've been absolutely here before. I wrote the first article on BBEE in 1995 in my column in The Star. But a column in The Star in 1995, right? 95, maybe some of you may not have been born. No, maybe you have. And then, during that period, people like me were criticized when we said, and if you go back, between 1995 and 1999, we said we're going in the wrong direction economically. Do not make cadre deployment because it has failed everywhere else. Deal with the corruption while it is beginning. In 1996, I had a march against me from the Library Gardens to the offices of the Star. I said, focus on get the maintenance. I mean, if any entity, any infrastructure needs to maintain, there's no politics around it. It has to be maintained. You can't come with ideology. You have to maintain the thing. Now, why am I linking it to the Trump? It is quite important to have a debate. If we stop having a proper debate and a change of direction because we fear outsiders, I'm not in that space. I haven't been in that space. For me, is we need to be confident, and we have to make, when we make policies, we have to make policies which has worked in other places. We can't repeat policies that failed anywhere else. And unfortunately, I had predicted that we're going to crash on a couple of levels, and it's all publicly. I've come out with books publicly. And so many others have done it. Some black intellectuals have even left the country, exhausted of trying to show there are different options. It doesn't mean because you criticize a policy, you're now anti-transformation. I mean, silly to say that. There are different ways to deal with the issue. And let's get the ideas out. There are many, many ways to get empowerment. Many, many ways. There are many other places where it has actually worked. Why do we want to repeat? If something failed in Zimbabwe, we want to repeat it. If something failed in Nigeria, do we want to repeat it? If a policy worked in Japan or a policy is working in China, why don't we have a look at that? That is my issue.
Okay, thanks,
Yes.
thanks, Prof.
Yeah.
I see you are triggering a. Yeah, you are triggering a dialogue. Okay. Yeah, just allow him to just pause. Yeah, where's the mic? Before you continue, because I think you just want to. Where's the mic? Okay. Then you've got 2 minutes. Yeah, you could have done it. I'm joking.
My name is Prof. This is coming from a fan, really. You've done amazing work in the past. But I was just jumping in to intervene because you weren't answering the key question in the room. Really, I was just worried about you running away from quite a quick question. You spent a lot of time going around circles when there's a real question that you haven't even tackled. Thank you.
So, Prof, I'm giving you 3 minutes
Okay.
to answer the key question.
Absolutely. So let me just start in terms of, I had actually made a list and I distributed it. I mean, it's been published. The first, let's start. In 1990, the UNDP put together South Africa's first development report. It was the first post-apartheid development report. I worked on that report. The report came out, if you remember, for those who were still around during those times, 2004. In that report, I wrote the economic empowerment audit in that report, the UNDP report. Now, go back, remember, Thabo Mbeki is the president, rejected the UNDP report. They rejected it. That was, we had made an audit of our policies since '94 for the period. It was all a local team. It was not an external team that came from outside the country. The chief economist of that report was Asker Adel-Sadeh, and Asker was the director at the time of NIP. So that's the first.
As you conclude, Prof.
I did 2 other reports. One for the Economist Intelligence Unit. Now, in the long past, there was annual reports every quarter on key issues around the world. You can Google the Economist Intelligence Unit, 2 reports. I did one, the historical BBEE in Africa, historically since the end of independence. Okay. The second one on BBEE in South Africa. And I can send anyone, I mean, I've made a list. The list is public. The list is on the website of Wits University. There's quite a number of academic articles, peer-reviewed academic articles. It's in a list. It is public. You can just Google William Gumede Wits. It's there. I did a peer-reviewed article on nationalization, and so on.
Okay.
And I did many, many other research reports.
Okay. I still need to allow Anne online. Is she back? Yeah. Okay, Anne,
I'm here.
Just 3 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to make 3 points to sort of that I think might be useful. The first is that we need to place this discussion in its context. The country is in deep, deep trouble. We're a country with 12.5 million people who would like to work but can't find a job. We have poverty. We have growth that's lower than our population growth rate. And we've had that sort of 1% growth or less for the last 15 years. So this conversation takes place in a context that's really important. My second point is we should look forward. There things that have been done the last 30 years, we can't undo them. We can learn from them. So yes, we must look at what's worked, but there is also a lot that, in my view, has not worked. And procurement is one of those. It's not just the cost of procurement, as Ben Naidu was talking about, where we need certainty, if that's the way you want to go, but it's the corruption, that it's been an umbrella for unbelievable corruption, which is essentially stealing from the poor. But what it's also done is that connected entrepreneurs, tenderpreneurs, crowd out real entrepreneurs in black society. They don't get the opportunity that the state told us they wanted to create. So we have to think about that as part of this. And most of the deals, certainly in mining and other areas, are done. They're done already. The last point I will make is that I back the call for a review. I think it's really important that it's a proper review. It's not an internal review to DTIC, and it's not just a few academics. It needs to be a properly constituted public review of a very important policy for the country, and it needs to be publicly debated with evidence and with alternative views being allowed to be put into the arena. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for our panel. I'm just going to beg for your indulgence as we take the last critical panel. Thank you so much to my panelists. Thank you so much for the robust debate. Like Prof has said this morning, this is first of its kind. So our very last one is the one that has been quoted from the early morning, is the funding of BBEE, DFI's performance trends and impact. So our first panelist is the CEO of the Industrial Development Corporation, Makhoshi Lekete. And then from SEDFA, the CEO is online, but he's represented in the room by Sipho Ngai, the executive strategy. Then from the National Empowerment Fund, we've got Karishma Govender. So in that order, this one will not take long, but then it actually closes on the gaps of financing that most of you were actually raising. So this panel examined the role of development finance institutions in giving effect to the ownership and enterprise development objectives of BBEE. It assesses performance trends and portfolio impact, interrogates whether existing financing instruments adequately support the transformation of the means of production, and considers how impact financing can mobilize broad-based ownership. So I'm going to start with the CEO of the IDC. Makhoshi, over to you. You can come here or you can talk. It's fine. Oh, you talk from me. Okay.
These chairs are not good for women, you know. Now you have to wear pants even if you don't want to. Good afternoon, everyone. I walked into a very fiery discussion. You see, Susan, you should never put a panel of men only. There's this thing called testosterone. And the closer you get to lunch, it gets out of hand. So I think that's a lesson. Never ever put a panel of men only. Even if there are too many men in the room, you always have to find one woman that can manage them. Ladies and gentlemen, our panel, I think it's quite short in terms of what we were asked to address. And I just want to say two things. You know, for those that don't know me, I spent an inordinate amount of time, I think, at the National Treasury, over 24 years. But in those 24 years, I was fortunate enough to work in 4 continents. And in all of those 4 continents that I worked in, North America, in Africa, outside South Africa, in Europe, and in Asia, the one thing that has been consistent that I found was policy consistency. And once a government decided on a policy position, they held on to it. It didn't mean that when there is there is a clear indication that the policy is failing, it cannot be reviewed. That it didn't mean that. But, and also that some of the countries that, and I'm an economist, so numbers mean everything to me. All of the countries that have made it have learned from another country. But more than learning from another country, they've perfected what other countries have done. So while we sit here and fight about whether BEE is the right policy or not, there are countries that are looking at what we are doing and they are most likely going to perfect it and move forward. So let's just think about that. And there was no mistake. I participated in, some of you were probably in school or in the drafting of the RDP. Go and look at chapter 5. If my name is not there, I don't feel bad. But I was there, and it talks about inclusivity. The RDP may not have been very clear about redistribution, but the policies that followed that made it very clear. But everything from chapter 1 to chapter 8 of the RDP talks about inclusivity. So for me, it's just as simple. At the IDC, we don't question BEE. It's very much adjunct to what the IDC does. It is embedded into the Corporations Founding Act, which has been reviewed, obviously, with time, strategy, and our operating model. And we do this how? We do this by making sure that we use the policy levers that we get from government. And also, we are fortunate enough to get support from our shareholder ministry, the DTIC, through some of the programs that they put in place to help us support the implementation of BBEE. So one of the Black Industrialists program that is being discussed is what the IDC has been using as a policy lever and also an instrument to support industrialization. So it's no doubt for me that BEE has to evolve and be reimagined, and that perhaps the focus on ownership moves beyond to creating industrialists, and how do we do that? So in my time, I've only been in the IDC for 12 months. I haven't visited a company that is white-owned. Most of the companies that are in the IDC books that are white-owned are legacy companies. They're doing well. They like working with the IDC. They are there. We can't chase them away for no reason, because they are paying us, they are doing well. However, what has the IDC done over time? It has reinvested the profits that it has made from its legacy investments into industrialization through the Black Industrialist programs, but embedding industrialization in everything that we do. Are we doing it well? We can improve on what we are doing. We can look at the Black Industrialist program and say, what has it succeeded? But since I've been there in the 12 months, I've visited 4 companies in 4 provinces, all Black-owned, all in the manufacturing sector, doing great work. One of them is in Roslyn. It supports the OEMs. One of its clients is Mercedes-Benz, doing very well. You know, what do they call the cover outside? I don't know about cars, but you know, the body of the car is produced by a Black company, 100% Black-owned. So you can pick and say it's 30 companies or 40 companies, but they are there. What do we need to do? Using the instruments as DFIs is to scale up. To scale up beyond the 30 companies. And by the way, the other statistic that I would like to just leave you with is that the IDC, in the last year when I joined, had done over 24 billion rand investments into the transformation space. And of that 24 billion rand, 21 billion went towards the Black industrialization through the BI program. And in terms of the number of clients that we covered, just in that 1 year, it was 604 that can be classified as Black, as women, as youth. The data is there. You can go to our annual report and check. So I am not making up the numbers. So I'm just saying that just because a policy has got gaps doesn't mean that you cannot fix it. And you can review it to do what you want it to do, but not to say that it has failed. And you mentioned Exaro. Exaro was created by the IDC through, you know, I'm Anglo-American moving out. And I can point other companies in the mining space, I can point other companies that were created by funding, original funding from the IDC. So transformation for me has to change, looking at what is it that is negative and looking at what we need to go. I agree with what Chris mentioned earlier about, unfortunately, we are in a space where the country and globally deindustrialization is just wreaking havoc on everybody. Yesterday we met with some members of unions where they were telling us the sectors that are mostly affected. It's manufacturing, it's agro-processing, clothing and textile. These are sectors that South Africa had been known for many years to excel in. So what do we do? Do we then fold our hands and say, oh, you know, we are deindustrializing, losing jobs in there? Or are we saying we are going to focus as we implement BBEE or as we transform, we're going to focus on these sectors that are deindustrializing, using the policy levers that we have. Susan, I'll mention this again. All the countries that get into these types of challenges have policy tools that they just pull out and implement. And that's really what we need to do. So we don't have to sell or leave black people going into sectors that are dying. They're not dying. It's just policy decisions that have been made. And through policy levers, you can change the situation to say, I'm going to protect this sector because I know it creates jobs. That's all that it takes. So I just want us not to focus on BEE for the sake of it, but to say that where are we losing jobs the most? What do we need to grow this country? Which sectors do we need to reindustrialize? At the IDC, we've identified the sectors of the future, and we've said we'll support value addition. So critical minerals is a sector that we're going to support. And we're talking to minerals, the Minister of Minerals, the Minister of Energy, we're talking to our own Minister of Trade and Industry to say, what support can we provide? We will put money, can you please match what we are doing? Which is why we have the Exploration Fund. And we've now attracted Anglo to come in and give us 600 million. We're looking at others to come in to partner with us so that we can focus on exploration, because exploration is it's a sector that doesn't attract a lot of funding. Also on green energy, I mean, some of the biggest, I don't know if you guys are aware, I mean, the renewable energy space in South Africa is driven by black people. I'm sure you know that, right? And in the main, black women. The renewable energy in South Africa is driven by black people, and the numbers are in the IDC books. You can go and look at them. So it's policy instruments that are needed. It's, it's financing that has long patience. So you're not going to get BBEE funded by commercial banks because they don't have the type of patience that development finance institutions have. And for us to be able to do that, we need government to support us, all DFIs at scale, to allow us to have transformation funding that has got patience. Because industry is not built over 5 years. Industry is built over 30, 60. That is where you see countries like South Korea and the Singapore. South Korea were telling us, you know, a few years ago that at some stage they were poorer than South Africa. And, you know, so it's really about patience, and the funding that we get has to have that patience. Scale is the third one. Somebody in the previous panel was talking about SMEs, whether SMEs can take us to scale. I think if we scale up, we're able to support SMEs, because at the IDC we believe in value chains, which is why we're so excited about critical minerals, because it's from the minerals, every step of the way, if you add value, the size of the entity changes, but everybody benefits. So I do believe that SMEs can benefit also from industrialization or from sectors of the future. Digitization, somebody talked about that. So all of these things, in my view, are connected. And I really need to just emphasize the fact that transformation is not achieved through shortcuts. As I said to you, everywhere where I've been, you have to build it deliberately through policy, through instruments. And in our case, we have decided on value chains with patient capital and with capable institutions. I think somebody mentioned also, the capacity of the state. Capable institutions are important. You don't want an administration that, for 5 years says BEE is important and then the next 5 years it's not. So I am not a politician. I cannot explain what is happening now with GNU and so forth. But all I'm saying is that you do need to have capable institutions, and these things take time. Thank you.
Thanks, CEO and CEO IDC. Thanks, Mahoshi. Sipho, you want to speak from there? It's fine. You can go ahead. You've got your 10 minutes.
Is it 10 minutes? Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, all protocol observed. My name is Sipho Ngai, and I'm representing SETFA on behalf of the CEO. So we also have a common view, like the IDC, as it relates to transformation. We're not shy about it. We don't mince our words. Over the last 5 years, we've disbursed just over 10 billion to black-owned SMEs, strictly. So our mandate is solely for black-owned businesses and nothing else. So out of the 10 billion that we disbursed, about 49% of that went towards female-owned businesses. We're not entirely happy with the number, because we do believe that we can get to over 50%, but it is work in progress from our side. And I think one of the challenges that we're also having is that out of that 10 billion, about 29% went towards youth-owned businesses, which again is another ticking time bomb for us, because we believe that we need to focus more in the youth going forward. So we do have focus programs just to make sure that we at least increase our numbers in the areas of women-owned businesses, youth-owned businesses, and lastly, in the area of businesses of people living with disabilities. In terms of what we think we can do better in the space of transformation in BEE, our view is that BEE, or transformation in its current form, is very fragmented as things stand. There might be a need for us to work together with private sector just to make sure that we maybe find a way of pulling the different funds that we have towards one fund, and that way we should be able to derive the impact that we're looking for. The danger about the isolation that we're having now, where each has their own programs, is that we work in silos to a point where we don't know what we're doing. But if we club up together, we can achieve the scale that we're hoping to achieve. So I think one of the areas, again, where we think we can improve is that we've picked up, especially along the mining houses, when a deal comes to us for funding, where it's an ED or supply development deal from the mining houses, it's in areas where there's not much value. So someone will come with a catering contract from the mines, black-owned business. We don't know where the yellow equipment contracts are going to or who's funding them, but our view is that black people should also take a strong involvement in those areas, because that's where the money is. Again, we've picked up that there's also an over-concentration of black-owned suppliers in the mining space who are into trucking and logistics, which again is a sector where the mining houses want to offload. So the minute you realize that the mining houses is offloading certain sectors, you must know there are problems. Because what they tend to do is that they'll fund you for the trip from the mine to maybe Richards Bay, and no one talks about the trip coming back. So whatever profits you've derived going to get diluted coming back, because you come back empty and no one is paying for that. So to the Deputy Minister's point earlier, we need to focus on the sectors and commodities that goes towards black people. Because we tend to get crumbs in the lack of a better word. I'm sad that the chairman of Senate has left, because I think that's a conversation that we can engage on to ensure how can we, in the future, ensure that black people do get the top of the cream of the crop type of deals, as opposed to deals that the mining houses want to outsource, because they're not really viable and profitable. Thank you.
Thanks, Sipho. Karishma from the National Empowerment Fund.
Thank you, Dr. Mangole. And good afternoon, Deputy Minister and all protocol observed. My name is Karishma Govender. I am the General Counsel at the NEF. I'm short, sorry. And for those of you who have maybe little knowledge of what the NEF does, our mandate is Black economic empowerment. So our sole purpose for existence is to promote Black economic empowerment, to fund Black businesses, to make sure that we grow the economic impact of Black businesses. So in doing that, we really are immersed in, you know, in the turmoil of what we can call BEE and the challenges that we face in implementing BEE. We fully and, you know, we live and breathe BEE on a daily basis. But we walk the journey with our entrepreneurs because we actually know just how difficult it is. It's not a straight line from start to finish. And it comes with many challenges, and a lot of people fall by the wayside as a result. And that's why you find that there's a very large proportion of SMMEs that don't succeed. Black SMMEs even more so, because the obstacles are far greater. I've been at the NEF for 18 years. And I can tell you that as an organization, we really try to be flexible and agile in terms of our approach to problems experienced by the Black entrepreneur, because we know that there isn't a one-size-fits-all. And I will take you through some of the things that we have come up with as solutions that need to still be implemented or that can be implemented at greater scale. And I think my colleagues from the DFI's CEO and SIPO, I think they've really highlighted some of the key points, scalability being one of them. But what I can say is that there isn't necessarily an absence of capital available. So it isn't a funding problem as such. It is a problem of the right type of funding being available. For BE transactions to really have a good chance at success, you need flexible capital, you need equity, quasi-equity type instruments. Because what you want is a business that's going to be able to absorb the shocks that come with business. They're not, you know, highly leveraged. They don't have huge amounts of debt to pay on a monthly basis. And so when something does go wrong, when, you know, there is a geopolitical issue that causes higher prices, or when there are shocks in terms of inputs, they can absorb those shocks without necessarily going into distress. So that is the one thing that I think we really need to focus on in terms of how do we access the right capital that we can blend with the capital that we have available on a larger scale so that we can do more. The other thing that is missing from this picture, and it doesn't just relate to BE, but I think the impact is far greater when it comes to BE, is a lack of distress finance. Because you find that Black companies have unique challenges, and there are so many things that they need to overcome, and the odds are very often against them. They do struggle. And at the NEF, we have a turnaround workouts and restructuring unit that actually provides the hand-holding through the distress situation so that we can assist them with solutions. But the one thing that is really missing in the South African market is the access to distress capital. Because if you have finance that is available to assist you through those rough times, you can actually survive them and eventually ride the wave, come out the other end, and maintain your jobs, eventually maybe even growing. But because that isn't available, Black companies can't withstand the stress that they experience. And so you find that there's a very high failure rate as one of the contributing factors to the challenges. In terms of demand for funding, that is definitely there. I mean, just from an NEF perspective, I can tell you that we receive about 20 billion rand worth of applications in a year. But we are only able to provide funding to in the amount of about 1 billion rand. That's just 5% of the demand that comes just to the NEF, and obviously if you include the other DFIs, it's a far greater number. So there's a huge gap in terms of what can be made available. And the 19 billion really remains unfunded from our side. And what I just want us to focus on what we have been able to do for context. Since inception, the NEF has funded 2,857 transactions, 16.7 billion rand in approved funding, and 160,000 jobs that we've supported. 48.2% of those have been dispersed outside of the main metros. So there's a very big focus on making sure that our money goes to rural communities, townships, and those areas that are not generally supported with economic activity. And 57% of beneficiaries include women ownership or women leadership. So we also are very, very passionate about women empowerment. And you know, just by with that little snapshot of what the NEF has done and what the NEF, what the demand is for funding, you can see that the DFIs are really critical to implement BEE and transformation in the country. There are limitations, but the role that the DFIs play is very, very critical. So we need to really move from, you know, consumption sectors to to productive centers, focus our attention not on the periphery, because, you know, Sipo's comment is so spot on. We are often playing in the periphery of the industries that we are involved in. The catering contract is not going to move the needle. You need to be involved in the substance of what that industry does. And I just want to, you know, highlight another challenge that I find really does prevent this. It's the issue of gatekeeping, and we haven't really talked about that issue today. But the issue of gatekeeping is, I think, one of the main things that are preventing black people from moving into lucrative businesses with lucrative contracts that can really move the needle, that can change the face of the industries that they operate in. And the gatekeeping happens on many levels. Not only does it happen because you've got, yes, maybe Commissioner mentioned 51% black-owned companies that are essentially fronting, where decision-making is not made by the black people in those businesses, it's made by the white partners. And they have very often the view that it's so convenient for me to keep using this person that I've been using for the last 20 years because I know them, they do my work well, I don't want to start with someone new, but it's also a convenient excuse for not giving opportunities to people that have been excluded previously. So the issue of gatekeeping comes from the very top, but you also find the issue of gatekeeping, this mentality of it's convenient for me to do things in a certain way, filtering through to the people that are employed there, even the black employees, where they say, you know, I can't give work to this law firm, I haven't worked with them before, let me just give it to this big firm, where I know that the vast majority of the equity partners in that firm are white males, not even female. So the issue of gatekeeping is something that we need to look at, and it's this smoke and mirrors game where on the face of it, it's an empowered company, but what is really happening behind the scenes and who is getting the value from that company, it is not black people, it's not small black companies. So let me quickly move, I see Dr. Mangole has stood up, to what I think we need to focus on as DFIs as solutions. Because the DFIs play slightly, well, different roles, but some of them do overlap. Some of the solutions that I think we really need to pay more attention to going forward are things like shared investment pipelines, where we create value for entrepreneurs irrespective of whose mandate it fits under, joint funding instruments, more collaboration, structured graduation pathways for scalability. And I say this because we can create many, many SMMEs, but the creation of the SMMEs is not the point. The point is to get sustainable, growing SMMEs that are creating more jobs that will withstand shocks, that will last in the long term. Access to market is a very critical one because the gatekeeping happens there. That's one of the solutions that we really need to work out. That's one of the problems we need to find a solution to, access to market. And lots of conversations are happening around that. And then one of the other really important things that we we know is a problem, and the scale of it seems insurmountable. But we working together, and also with the likes of UJ and the universities and business schools, we can also tackle the issue of funding and business readiness. Because you find that a lot of applications are declined not because they're not good transactions, but because they're just not ready. They're not in a position where you can give that business funding that will be paid back. So these are some of the solutions that we have identified. And I think working together as DFIs, we have a very important role to play in making sure that BEE does grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karishma. Just to sum up, to say that one of the key things that actually that is coming through the BBEE, and that is being implemented in partnership with the 3 DFIs, is the Transformation Fund. So the Transformation Fund aims to aggregate funding intervention that are driven by both the BBEE and the Competition Act. What we have seen from this morning, from the different speakers, from what Commissioner Matona is saying, is that the issue of access to financing, but also after you access the finance, access to market, access to capability is what Karishma is talking about, to say if we partner with the universities, we're able to eliminate failure of most of the funded enterprises. The transparency, which is the telemetry. So I think those are some of the key themes that have been coming through in terms of us being transparent, in terms of us having the database that you are able to show, to say these are the funded black-owned enterprises, which is the main key objective of the Transformation Fund. On that note, there is someone who has put me here. It's now his turn to actually take over. And I guess the question that has been asked, many of the questions that were asked is that where to from here. So with this panel, he designed the program in such a way that I don't take question and answer, because it goes straight to networking. So on that note, I'm gonna allow Prof. Busani to take over the stage.
Dr. Susan, thank you very much for steering the ship today. And thanks once again to all the panelists who responded positively to our request. Ngwenya from the Union Buildings asked me to also cover his part, Deputy Minister. So firstly, let me do acknowledgements before I then summarize. I want to acknowledge the Presidency Policy Unit that began this idea that we should congregate like this. The Commissioner and the Commission, they are having some pressing issues today. So he came here because he had to be here, but he was having other big challenges, the Commissioner and the colleagues at the Commission. So thanks to him for availing, and we agreed that he will do the presentation because given his mandate, he needed to be able to project some of those numbers that he has projected. My colleague, Dr. Susan, from DTIC and other colleagues who have assisted from day one in pulling this together. Thanks to you and the DTIC team, including at a ministry level where we engaged. Deputy Minister, we were very deliberate not to bring politicians to this session. You were the exception for a number of reasons. Including the fact that we thought you would be able to freely engage with the evidence in a manner in which you were able to engage with the evidence. We also didn't want to turn this into a political fracas or debate. So thank you, DM, for agreeing that you come and you set this scene and we engage with the debate. I must thank the colleagues from the DFIs. In fact, I mean, they're also giving us lunch today. So I really colleagues, I must state it was not out of disrespect that the other CEOs couldn't be here. One CEO apologized, is accompanying the president elsewhere. Another one was showing me a leg lying in hospital yesterday, which is why they sent. And then I apologize for the ITC CEO because she had many pressures this morning, but out of respect for this, she thought she will come only for a few minutes in the afternoon, so we see that she was committed to be here, but the other executives were here. So the other executives were here. There was a lot of questions on the virtual platform. Interestingly, I did capture them. Many of them, people wrote their application reference numbers. There's several of them, like my application is stuck, this is where it is at, and so on. We are going to forward those and refer those things to yourselves, because at least those people did write their contact details. And to the panelists, thank you very much, for preparing, agreeing, sticking to the script, mobilizing, your own evidence in the manner in which you have been able to do. I think this was, fiery. Well, Anne was supposed to be here. She couldn't be here. She would have broken the what you saw earlier on, Mahoshi. But Anne had other challenges, but at least she was able to join us online, and there were colleagues from her organization who were also here. So I want to thank everybody, especially those who were part of the organizing for coming. What did we promise when we tried to pull this together and convene all of you? We promised that we will arrange a rigorous evidence-based platform that interrogates BBEE, the past, the present condition, as well as the future direction. We promise that this is not going to be a kind of those shows you see on SABC where people are talking about manifestos and things like those. We wanted to move towards the concrete. What does the evidence tell us? And you did see today people came from different angles mobilizing, evidence in support and against, even coming up with new angles of debating those issues. I am sure there's some of you who might not have predicted that Prof. Chris Malekane will have engaged with it differently in the manner, providing a critique, but using a different angle, when many other people who are critiquing it are critiquing it from a point of view of performance and just pure numbers. And the commissioner did warn in this morning that when you concentrate the critique on the money and matrices and so on, we will run into trouble, as we have seen. As we are aware, there was an emphatic statement made by the president in the State of the Nation address that BBEE is here to stay. You remember he said so. But he also made a commitment that a review must occur. So DCIC, as well as the commission, are leading the review. The policy unit in the presidency, on behalf of the president, are taking a keen interest on ensuring that this is done. It's also in the program of action. Deputy Minister, they will have to be reporting to cabinet every 3 months, regarding the work that is happening. We try to bring the regulators, as you saw, who must bring data, the economists, engaging with evidence, development financiers, who are here bringing the evidence. We brought the people who will come up with a critique, different critique, as we saw today, but also most importantly, scholars who also dealt with the issues of the methodology, because I think this is very vital. Many often when we are engaging on policy review processes, we forego this conversation around the method. And the consequence of which is that we may arrive at a wrong station, as it were, because we didn't ask these fundamental questions of the method, and those were dealt with today. We are going to arrange a conference, a much bigger conference. Those who are here, those who are online, and several others will receive a call. So all of those who are presenting today, so Prof. Gumede is gone now, all of those who are presenting today will be expected to present, detailed, papers. The type of work will be coordinating with Dr. Susan, colleague in the commission, as well as my colleague, Prof. Vidagas from the School of Economics. We will be convening this conference, working with these partners, but it will be later in the year. We think we should give you at least 100 days to prepare those papers. Why is it? It's because the expectation from the president, based on the brief we got, was that he is looking for evidence. So that in the end, when adjustments are made, all of those adjustments must be based on evidence. Now, this evidence matters, including for the colleagues who are sitting in front, because it's also about the evidence, about practice. And when I was talking to some of them yesterday, I indicated that there are many instances where black entrepreneurs, of course, there's many problems they will experience, including the problem of access to finance, but far often, the humiliating experience they go through to secure the, purchase order financing, it's such that when they tell a story of their success in future, they will never mention any of them, right? And that's part of the practice issues that we need to be looking into, because where we are today, of course, with the new, I will say, regime, for lack of a better word, or the new model of supporting a black economic empowerment, it must include how we are going to alter the model as well. Of providing support, including financial support. I was telling someone online, by the way, that if you want to know now whether you are registered to vote and where you are registered to vote, you can punch in 5 numbers to the IEC, and this will give you feedback. And so, but if you were to do the same at SIVDA, it won't give you an answer of where your application is, right? So it might as well be that, and by the way, unfortunately, because you are national, the 3 of you, because you are national, there is inordinate amount of pressure that you must bear. At a provincial level, there's a lot of DFIs. Some of them may be present physically and so on, but may not be felt in the real economy, and yet they've got the resources. So there will be, for the purpose of the conference itself, we will have to package a stream ton that just looks at the DFIs, the modalities, and so on. For our sins, some years ago in the presidency, we did a DFI review. It was a very useful report in the policy unit, but then there was a change. The tyrant of the log frame came, called the DPME. We abandoned it. It was a very useful report that has been written at the time, led by Treasury, reviewing DFIs, which included the model of the models and methodologies that we're using. And many people got it wrong, including some commissioners, about the PIC. Terrible report that I must say, that I'm no longer a public servant. That's a commission report, because it did everything else, but it failed to do one thing. That at the PIC, there is no back office, precisely because there is no front office. The consequence of which is that these things are emailed to individuals, and eventually when you get a loan from the PIC, people think it's because we are politically connected. When in fact, today, if you send a message to the IEC, they will tell you where we are registered to vote. In many of the institutions that are supporting black entrepreneurs, you won't be able to do something similar to that. Finally, oh yeah, no, I meant the Commission of Inquiry. I meant the Commission of Inquiry. No, the other commission in the DTI, CICP, I think is more agile. You can send a star hash and you will get a response and stuff like this. Other commissions, possibly because in that Commission of Inquiry, nobody understood DFI and funding and financing, in my view, although there was a former governor of the Reserve Bank in it. So finally, going forward, I mean, it's a terrible report. I mean, I'm terrible. With due respect to the former governor and the former judge, very, very. If you read it, you will see what I'm talking about, because the main critique is that if you sent an application at the PIC, at the time you didn't know who to send it to, and you didn't know how to follow it up because there was no reference, there was no tracking system. The consequence of which is that everything that was funded was then misconceived or miscontrolled to have been spearheaded by a particular human being inside the organization, because there were no digital platforms that were built to make sure that you track your application throughout the system. Consequently, no one will then accuse the CEO of the ITC for having pushed a particular application of a particular business just because it came from her. It came from her because maybe the email was sent to her, right? Like sometimes that's how it is because we haven't built a front and a back office to process. Also, email is public, yeah. You know, so going forward, we're going to do a conference. There will be a couple of themes. We'll deal with issues of practice across the regulators, across the financiers, and everybody else. I think we're going to deal a lot deeply with what Dr. Prof. Vilakazi spoke about, which and also someone else spoke about the issues of the markets, how we understand about issues of the markets and the value chains, and so including value creation. We will try and put a lot more of that. We need to dive deeper into issues of the demographics, including the age, but also the spatial dimensions of it, whether most of the transactions are concentrated. But also, Commissioner, there are many transactions that are invisible. In the main, what dominates the headline, including the idea that these things are politically connected, is those deals like the ones of Sandile Zungu was here and others. But there will be many others that are invisible. I suppose we also need to dig deeper into the issue of fronting and how it manifests. In the majority of cases, it will be vigilant institutions, as we've seen in COJ and elsewhere, where we are able to track and identify and deal with those. There is a possibility that there may be many other types of fronting that might be occurring. Duma, who's been tracking how money gets moved and so on, one of the things he has and we may have to be looking at is even the issue of the dividends. That if this is the case, therefore, if you own so much, then it means eventually you must be paid a particular percentage. And in some instances, that is the type of data we may not be having. So it will be open, it will be robust and rigorous. Eventually, hopefully, which is something very rare in the review of public policy, there will be sufficient evidence that will support the DTIC, the Commission, and the President to then chart a new path for empowerment. There might be changes in how the program is designed. We don't know. Only the evidence will be able to tell us the new frontiers and so on. Other than, in fact, including the international dimensions of it, one of the things that, I must say this, the biggest failure of most of organs of state, and I was there myself for 20 years, the biggest failure is communication. The biggest failure is communication. I was telling a friend who hates the ululating in graduations and all of those things. And I said, look, part of the reason is that those people who are ululating is because those kids are the first ones to go to university and they were enabled by NSFAS. But we've never had NSFAS say when SAICA released the results. SAICA every year released the results of how many people pass board exams. They never tell us how many of those were enabled by the state through NSFAS. So the absence of the organs of state in the Battle of Ideas and the communication space then make it possible that people will attack a policy position, even if it got its own weaknesses, as many of them do. So the issues of communication are a big factor in the majority of cases, and we will be looking into those as well. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming. It was great to have you. Lunch will be served inside, outside. We will do a synthesis of the report and we'll email it to all of you because we've got your email addresses and most of you have got your mobile numbers since you registered to be here. Thank you very much. And wait. If they are still here, please, the other people who are here, if you can come and take a group photo so we can say this is how they looked in happier days. My friend, my colleague Gumed, I think is gone, but please do come. All the panelists also come. Gwenya, come, both of you. I'm no longer part of that faculty. I was going to catch him at the faculty and ask him the evidence question. We'll do it here. Just stand here. Do it. Let's do it. No, start here. Start here. So please, this is how they looked in happier days.